Hello, this is Attorney Augustus Corbett, and I want to do some straight talk right now about voting. November 8th, 2022, our nation will hold midterm elections. Now, I know a lot of people just skip midterm elections, but that is really a horrible mistake generally. But it's especially important right now, and it's especially important for African Americans. And I want to give you 3 reasons. Number 1, if you don't vote, the GOP will take control of the government. And if they take control of the government, here's what you need to consider. The GOP fears and hates Black progress. They fight Black progress tooth and nail. And we see it throughout all the systems that make up this great country. We see it in the criminal justice system. We see it in the healthcare system, education system. We see it in corporate America. We see it throughout this nation. Wherever there is Black progress or the potential or promise of Black progress, the GOP is there to fight it. We see it also in the voting system. The disenfranchisement efforts of the GOP proves beyond the shadow of a doubt that they fear Black progress. So, if you don't want a party in control of the government that fears your progress as an African American, make sure you get to the polls November 8th, 2022. There's a second reason. The GOP promotes a white supremacy agenda. That too is clear. Our nation has struggled with racism since its founding, and it has not overcome that struggle. And today, while slavery has been abolished, while Jim Crow has been dismantled, today we deal with systemic racism. And that's racism that we see in the systems of this country. Again, the criminal justice system, the education system, the political system, and etc. That racism is there for the first reason that I gave you, because the GOP fears Black progress. So it has implemented policies, procedures, and practices in the various systems of America to fight Black progress. So the second reason the GOP is bad for African Americans is because it promotes a white supremacy agenda. And they do it blatantly. They don't even try to hide it. They have embraced white supremacist terrorist groups like the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, etc. And there's one third reason, and that is the GOP favors rich people. So if you're rich, that is, if you're in the top 1% of 1% of this nation, then yes, I can understand you supporting the GOP, because when they're in power, you're going to get tax breaks and all other kinds of incentives. But if you're not in that group, it makes no sense whatsoever for you to support the GOP. Let me give you an example. Joe Biden has implemented a program to forgive $20,000 in student loans for regular people. And a lot of the people who will benefit most from that $20,000 student loan forgiveness are African Americans. Why? Because the average white family has about $190,000 in wealth, whereas the average Black family has about $25,000 in wealth. That's a wealth gap. And because of that wealth gap, African Americans tend to borrow to send their kids to college. So quite naturally, African Americans have more student loan debt. So this $20,000 student loan program that Joe Biden has put on the table will benefit African Americans mostly. But what is the GOP doing to stop and hinder that program? They're literally suing the Biden administration to stop that student loan forgiveness program. Although they supported Trump when he gave the richest Americans almost $2 trillion in tax cuts. So who do you think the GOP is for? Certainly not for working people. They are for the wealthiest Americans, and the wealthiest white Americans, to be specific. So those are just 3 reasons. There are many more. just 3 major reasons why come November 8th, 2022, you must make your way to the polls, no matter what you have to do to get there. And there are probably some hurdles to vote now because the GOP has done a whole lot of work to hinder black folks from voting. But if you have to stand in the line for 8 hours, as some voters did during the 2020 election, then do so. It's unfortunate that we have to do that, but we need to do it nonetheless. If we fail to vote in this election, that will give them the opportunity to implement and enact more voter suppression laws. So, what I'm saying to you is, make sure you vote November 8th, 2022. Again, I'm Attorney Augustus Corbett. Thank you for listening.